My name's Jake, and I've always been the kind of guy who scoffs at ghost stories. Grew up in a small town where everyone had a tale of something creepy happening to them, but I never believed any of it. The idea that something supernatural could be lurking in the shadows just seemed ridiculous to me. That was before I moved into this apartment. It's nothing fancy, just a one-bedroom in an old building downtown. The rent's cheap, and I like the location. At least I used to, but now, I can't even step foot inside without feeling like I'm being watched. It all started about 3 weeks ago. I'd been living there for a few months with no issues. But then one night, as I was lying on the couch after a long day, I heard it, a faint scratching sound. It was subtle at first, so I didn't think much of it. Living in an old building, you get used to weird noises. Probably the pipes, or maybe a mouse. Except over the next few nights, the scratching got louder. Not constant, just persistent. It would stop for a while, then start again. Always at night, and always coming from beneath the floorboards in my living room. I wasn't freaked out at first. Annoyed, maybe. I tried banging on the floor a few times to scare off whatever was making the noise. But it didn't help. Instead, it got worse. The sound wasn't just scratching anymore. It was moving, shifting, like something was crawling under there. I thought about calling the landlord again, but he already shrugged me off when I mentioned it the first time. "Old building, Jake. Nothing to worry about," he said. I could tell he wasn't interested in dealing with it. But then, the voice started. I remember the first time I heard it clearly. It was late, probably around 2 in the morning. I had just fallen asleep when I woke up to the loudest scratching yet. I was lying there, groggy and frustrated, when I heard it. Soft, but unmistakable. "Help me!" I froze. My heart hammered in my chest as I sat up, straining to listen. I told myself it had to be in my head, maybe some weird dream hangover. But there it was again. "Please, help me!" I jumped off the couch so fast I almost tripped over the coffee table. It sounded like it was coming from directly beneath me. I paced around the living room, trying to convince myself it wasn't real, that I was just hearing things. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. Over the next few nights, it got worse. The voice, always the same, pleading, begging for help. I couldn't sleep. I could barely focus at work. I was losing my mind, but every time I mentioned it to anyone, they thought I was being dramatic. My friends told me to check for a carbon monoxide leak. "That stuff can make you hallucinate," they said. It wasn't hallucinations. I know what I heard. Last night, I reached my breaking point. The scratching was relentless, and the voice was louder than ever, echoing in my head. I grabbed a crowbar, determined to end this once and for all. I tore up the floorboards in the living room, pulling them apart in a frenzy, expecting to find, I don't even know what. But there was nothing, just dirt and concrete. I stood there panting, staring down at the empty space, my heart pounding in my chest. I had convinced myself I'd find some hidden compartment, maybe some kind of trapped animal, but there was nothing. I almost laughed. Maybe I really was going crazy. That's when the voice returned. "Help me! I'm so close!" It wasn't muffled anymore. It wasn't coming from below. It was right there, right next to me. My flashlight flickered and went out, plunging me into darkness. The room felt suddenly colder, the air thick with something I couldn't explain. I held my breath, praying it was over. Then I felt it, something cold and slimy brushing against my ankle. I jumped back, dropping the crowbar as I scrambled to get away, but I slipped on the loose floorboards and crashed to the ground. In the pitch-black silence, I could hear my own ragged breathing. And then the voice spoke again. "I can see you now." That was it. I bolted, practically throwing myself out the door and into the hallway. I didn't stop until I was outside, standing in the freezing October air, gasping for breath. I haven't been back since. But even now, sitting in my car a few blocks away, I can still hear it. The voice. It's not coming from the apartment anymore. It's in my head, and it's getting louder.